Yeah, so I think especially that's been challenging for young men is something
Mm,
that we've seen. We have a LEAP Kids program, which is sixth through eighth graders. And statistically, it's very 50-50 split boys and girls. And empathy is still seen as a pretty cool thing. And in middle school, to be kind is cool, and they want to be helpful and they want to please. As soon as you get into high school, and we've seen this no matter where these sanctuaries are in the country, it becomes very uncool and unpopular to be a boy that has compassion and empathy for others. And I think that may be, a big, largely influenced by our culture.
hmm
It's not always cool for girls either, but we see more girls being willing to join the program in high school and be really excited about it. And boys, even if they're excited, they're a little concerned about how it will impact their image. And
mm.
so, one thing that we've really been working on is to show examples of all different kinds of people from all walks of life, all genders, all identities, all races.
Welcome to the Better Life for Animals podcast, where we amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. Through powerful stories and expert insights, we shine a light on the efforts to rescue, protect, and advocate for animals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Every follower helps us reach more people. And support animal sanctuaries. Enjoy the conversation.
Our guest today is Danielle Hanosh. Danielle is the co-founder of Blackberry Creek Farm Animal Sanctuary in Colfax, California, and the co-founder and executive director of LEAP, which is Leaders for Ethics, Animals, and the Planet, an alternative to traditional youth agriculture programs like 4-H and FFA with a focus on compassion, sustainability, and the connection between human rights, animal rights, and climate change. With a teaching credential, MA in education, 10 years of experience as a public school teacher, and 9 years of experience running a farm sanctuary, Danielle is uniquely positioned to ensure LEAP's success as a robust, nationwide program and is continually inspired by the animals in her care at the sanctuary. She is also a ghostwriter and the author of several children's books about animals. Danielle, welcome to the podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's such an honor to be here.
Tell us, did you start off with your sanctuaries and then leap? Let's talk about how it all started for you and just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. So the sanctuary started sort of unexpectedly. I was a public school teacher. I taught middle school, primarily sixth and seventh grade. And I had visited a couple of farm animal sanctuaries. I had sort of started going down the rabbit hole of documentaries in my 20s, learning about what I didn't know about where my food came from. I was an omnivore at the time. And you know how that goes. Once
I
you
do.
learn, once you
You
learn a
can't
little
unlearn
bit,
it.
you
No.
can't unlearn it, and you sure can't stop learning more. And so that's how it started for me as far as veganism goes and my passion for animals. And then I was teaching full time. I noticed throughout the years that a lot of my students, especially those that were in the foster care system or had challenges at home, that they really had a special connection with animals, many of them, and that not enough of them got to be out in nature enough. And I found that very healing. And I had visited a farm sanctuary in Hawaii, actually, Leilani Farm Sanctuary, where they worked with students a lot from the public school system. And they did a lot of children's programming there. And so when we founded the sanctuary back in 2014, the original idea was to be able to rescue these animals that obviously needed a place to go, especially I'm here in Northern California, but as anywhere in the United States, there's not a lot of places that take animals that aren't dogs and cats.
Right.
And then, of course, to be able to pair that with the students that I was teaching and to give them a safe place to come learn and volunteer and be around animals in a healing way. And for both the animals and the students. So that's how the sanctuary began. LEAP started a few years after that, because I had students here so often that would often continue coming up in high school and their college years and volunteering and building bonds with these animals. other sanctuaries started reaching out saying they wanted to implement a similar program at their sanctuary because we had formalized it a little bit, had a little bit more of an educational spin than just the volunteering. And so 3 sanctuaries, myself included, and 2 others, Jameson Humane and Rancho Compasión, we back in 2020 during the pandemic had some discussions about how to make this accessible to all vegan sanctuaries across the country so that they could turn into classrooms essentially. And so we founded LEAP as its own separate nonprofit to be able to fundraise for that and to provide a curriculum that was free and accessible to all the students and all the sanctuaries so they could just implement it right away without a lot of the legwork that comes with building curriculum and hands-on workshops. So that's the short answer of a multi-year journey.
That's fantastic. So how does LEAP define a better life for animals? And what does that look like in practice?
So that really looks like, the sanctuaries, we vet them very thoroughly, and our ethics at LEAP align with ethical veganism in the way where we want the animals to be first always at the sanctuaries. So traditionally, kids that have met farm animals have done so either in a petting zoo type situation or in an agricultural program like FFA and 4-H. And at sanctuaries, of course, our top priority is giving the animals safety, security, autonomy to interact or not interact with humans, and to provide them, a true sanctuary to live out their lives. And so we really focus on anti-speciesism and helping kids understand that these animals are all individuals. And then, of course, putting that into context in the big picture where animal agriculture comes into play and how most of these animals are not seen as individuals. So that's a big question, but I think that's where we would start with that.
Why is it important to focus on the youth when advocating for animal welfare and ethical leadership?
I think I hear so often from adults that they wish something like this had existed when they were younger, and I feel the same way. And not to count out adult learning, I do think it's really important that adults have the chance to learn these things too, because many of us, myself included, didn't really know anything about animal agriculture or how it impacted wildlife, the ecosystems, biodiversity, all of those things until I was probably in my late 20s. And I think not only would it have been great to have a program like this where you could learn those things at a younger age, but for the young people now, it really opens their mind as far as what's out there, as far as internships and jobs. I think kids especially think, I love animals, I want to be a veterinarian, which is great. And that's a viable option. But there's so many different ways that people can help animals in their career choice or even in volunteerism. And I think that's part of reaching the next generation at a younger age. The other thing I would say is, I think the younger the child, the more impressionable they are. And that's pretty much true for all of us. When we're younger, we really form our belief system, and much of that is shaped by our families and our culture and our communities. And for all of us, in most of us, I'd say, unless you were raised vegan, it's very normal to grow up with an idea that animals are less than humans in many ways. And so I think kids in general have a very clear understanding of what's fair and what's not fair, and that they all have inherent value. And I think by cementing that into them when they're little, it really serves to empower them as they get older, that they don't just have to accept, that they're in FFA or 4-H and they have to send their animal to slaughter afterwards, that they have grown to love and care for. That really stomps the compassion out of a lot of students, even though it's very traumatizing for many of them. It's the message that this is normal, this is the circle of life, you're feeding the community. It does not have to be that way. We live in a society where, as we can get all of our nutrients and everything that we need from plants. And so giving the kids the choice when they're younger to not participate in things like that, while still giving them the benefits of those programs as far as leadership and public speaking and community building and caring for animals, that's really the key behind LEAP.
Do you find any resistance from parents? Because I agree with you, we definitely need to start with children, but more often than not, if the parents aren't in for it, it's going to be a challenge, right? Yes. So do you're a compassionate alternative.
Right.
And do you find that you can slip right in where they're otherwise offering, you know, 4-H, or is there some resistance still?
There, I think both, honestly. We operate in a lot of rural communities because sanctuaries typically are in rural communities where these programs have been around for many, many, many decades. I think there's a clear split there in the sense that I don't think a lot of hardcore FFA families that have been doing it for generations will want their children to leave the program. And that's of course their choice. They were not pressuring anyone. We simply want to be that other option because there really are, we've found quite a few kids that are in those programs that love the positive parts of them. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of good
Right.
things about 4-H and FFA. We're not about bashing their entire programs. I think there's a lot of leadership there, but then there's a lot of very contradictory ethics that come in when the child is raising an animal and learning to see them as a product. And that's what we want to offer an alternative for. And so we've had some students. I personally had one student here at Del Oro, which is a local high school that has a big FFA program. And she was the president of FFA. And she did LEAP simultaneously. And that was really interesting for her because she said in all of her years of going through school, she was a senior, she had gotten resistance even from her peers in the agricultural program because she always would raise chickens and dairy goats, and then had a friend who had property who she would rehome them to as pets. And she purposefully would never raise animals that were slated, as they call them in the program, terminal animals, where they are going to be slaughtered. So she got pushback even from her peers in the program as a FFA leader for not slaughtering her animals. And then I think coming to a program like LEAP and seeing like, wow, there's a way to work with goats and chickens and other animals that I love in a hands-on way and still learn a lot of the important things that I'm learning and not have that conflict of ethics for her. So that's really what we offer. Some parents will be resistant to it. And of course, that's, they have a choice to participate or not. But again, I think many of us wish something like this would have existed when we were young. And so we're just there to be another option.
Well, hopefully LEAP will expand and the others will diminish over time as people become more compassionate.
Yeah, that would be great.
How do you teach students to critically examine the food system and its impact on animals, people, and the planet?
It's really challenging because there's so much there to cover. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
found. There's so much content. I mean, we could cover just the impact on the planet for a whole year. But of course, we are limited with the time we have for students. So each month that the children go through the program, it's a monthly session at their partner sanctuary, whatever sanctuary is closest to them. They have a different topic that they focus on. So we start with ethics in general, and we talk about what are ethics, what are our ethics as a society in general, very basic things like murder is wrong and those things that people tend to agree on. And then we talk about what are the ethics that people don't always agree on and how do we define those for ourselves. So do our families contribute to that? Do our teachers, do our peers, does the culture as a whole, our food system, all of those things. And we really try to give them all the information and have them critically examine what are their ethics right now? Have they even ever thought about them? Because many of us don't think about them critically till we are older. And then by the end, they end up creating their own personal code of ethics after they've learned, all of the things that we teach about the intersection of all of these different topics. I think the intersection of human and animal rights is a really good one and one that opens a lot of eyes as far as I'm sure you get people saying, you're vegan. Why don't you care about humans? Aren't humans, there's so many human issues. And we say, absolutely. Like animal agriculture is extremely detrimental to humans from
Mm-hmm.
the health problems that it causes by consuming those products to people that work in the industry that are exploited. We have, a whole plethora of issues there. And so we really try to help the students understand that they have a choice each and every day with what they choose to consume and what they choose to support that really can impact the climate, the humans, the animals, and all of the above. And then we hope that they make more and more choices that align with those ethics.
What leadership skills do the students gain from participating in LEAP, and how do you see these skills translating into real-world advocacy?
Yeah, so there's so many, but the ones that we focus on confidence, focus on public speaking, and we focus on empowering kids to figure out what it is that they are really very passionate about. Usually it has something to do with animals, but they may find they're really passionate about law and policy. And we talk about using that as a venue to help others. And I think one of my favorite stories was from Unity Farm Sanctuary in Massachusetts. They had a student who was pretty much selectively mute. She didn't speak very much. She could, of course, and I'm not sure, why she chose not to. But by the end of the year, she got up in front of everyone at Friends and Family Day and helped give an educational tour and talk about the animals and talk about what she learned. Her parents were so proud. We were so proud. Seeing things like that, I think that's the type of leadership we want to build. And that may look different for every kid. Obviously, we have really talkative kids at the beginning that just need some help channeling that into advocacy or streamlining that. But I think it's just giving kids the tools they need to go out and be voices for whatever it is that they care about.
You're listening to Better Life for Animals podcast. Our mission is to amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. First of all, go ahead and subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching or listening. And then get involved by visiting betterlifeforanimals.com. That's betterlifeforanimals.com. Be sure to check out our blog, learn more about incredible sanctuaries, and explore our book section, where 100% of net proceeds from book sales are donated to sanctuaries. Every action you take helps to make a difference. And remember, subscribe to this channel. And now, back to the show.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Better Life for Animals, and our guest is Danielle Hanosh from LEAP. Danielle, what role does empathy play in LEAP, and how do you help students see it as a strength?
Yeah, so I think especially that's been challenging for young men is something that we've seen. We have a LEAP Kids program, which is 6th through 8th graders. And statistically, it's very 50-50 split boys and girls. And empathy is still seen as a pretty cool thing. And in middle school, to be kind is cool. And they want to be helpful and they want to please. As soon as you get into high school, and we've seen this no matter where these sanctuaries are in the country, it becomes very uncool and unpopular to be a boy that has compassion and empathy for others. And I think that may be, a big, largely influenced by our culture. It's not always cool for girls either, but we see more girls being willing to join the program in high school and be really excited about it. And boys, even if they're excited, they're a little concerned about how it will impact their image. And so one thing that we've really been working on is to show examples of all different kinds of people from all walks of life, all genders, all identities, all races, talk about how these kinds of people can make a difference in whatever kind of leadership role they want to take, and try to make that seem normal, because it should be. I think empathy in our society is lacking in general right now at this point in history. And I think even adults don't always find it easy or glamorous to stand up for those who don't have a voice. So I think by providing positive examples of that, obviously, like there's celebrities, there's people like, there's vegan athletes, there's people like Jane Goodall and wildlife conservationists that are really stepping outside the box to make empathy cool and to help others, which we hope has a ripple effect. And then there's also people we have come in as guest speakers, because we want to see that the everyday people in their lives, like large animal veterinarians, animal rights attorneys, all of these people have different skill sets, and they are highly compassionate, and they're very successful, well-liked individuals. And so I think giving kids role models in that way is important, but we also don't have all the answers for that yet. So we continue to learn from the kids about what they need.
seems in today's world that it takes courage sometimes to be compassionate. But I love your idea that you focus on courage or confidence, excuse me, because with that confidence, knowing who you are, you probably have a better chance. We know that teenagers want to get along with their peers, and that's going to always be a challenge at that age.
Yep.
However, with that courage to stand up for what's right, which you are instilling in them, I think that we could see a turn in that area. But it is a problem in our society. I agree with you.
It is. I sure hope so. I think community building is really important. That's one thing we've seen through the program. We have tried it virtually and in person, and the in-person LEAP sessions are just so much more impactful because there's that community, and they do find peers that are compassionate and interested in the same things, and they can, build that very important part, especially as a teenager, of fitting in and having a community, which of course is also important for the adults in the animal rights movement.
I could also see maybe a mentor program with some cool adult, that person could aspire to.
Absolutely.
In what ways do you think your program encourages the students to devise solutions for a more compassionate and sustainable food system?
Well, there's several different areas that we focus on. I think one is we focus on them making changes that are sustainable for them and their families. Most families that come into the LEAP program are not vegan, and many have never even thought about being vegetarian. And so the first thing we do is try to educate not only the students, but the families on ways to move in that direction, like you said, to make it a sustainable long-term transition, but also really educating them about how many different areas that choice impacts. So if a parent, for example, is very resistant to their student giving up animal products or reducing them because maybe they don't have a particular affinity for farmed animals, there's also the health route, right? We can talk about how important this is for health reasons. And obviously that still, reinforces our mission. We can talk about climate change. If people are environmentalists, if they're really concerned about wildlife conservation, if they're really concerned about deforestation, overfishing, all of those things point back to the way that our food system needs to change. And then lastly, I would say we collaborate a lot with other organizations, and we're only 2 years into our nationwide expansion of LEAP. This is only the second year we've been across the country and not just in California. And we're trying to work with different organizations that are providing tools and guidance for students to make changes in their communities. So for example, we did a webinar with the Raven Corps last year, and they are a group that tries to replace milk as the mandatory option in schools. And we talk about, getting other options in, and how dairy is inadvertently also more difficult for people of color to consume traditionally. And so how that becomes a whole nother issue of equity for students, of the students that are required to drink dairy at school, or that's the only option they have with lunch. And really getting kids to advocate in their own communities. How can we get plant-based milks, as the default in schools? Maybe kids have to ask for dairy milk. How can we get the food drives where we collect food in schools? We had one of our sanctuary partners do a plant-based food drive and, get hundreds of pounds of plant-based food that they donated to their local food banks. So all of those things, I think, are the very practical ways that we try to help the kids make those changes.
Well, speaking of partnerships, how important is it to organize with, collaborators such as like the Animal Legal Defense Fund?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think the movement as a whole would be stronger if more people collaborated. And I think that's happening. I think it's starting to happen. And I think even in the sanctuary world, we are notoriously in our own little bubbles, partially because we're, far away and we're doing the day-to-day thing of caring for all the animals and fundraising and this stuff that never stops. But I really have seen even the sanctuaries that are part of LEAP, we have quarterly meetings where we hop on with all the West Coast sanctuaries, and they're able to talk about, hey, what's going well, what's not, what are the kids struggling with, what are you doing to get these kids to talk more, or to get the kids to engage with this more. And building that collaboration has been incredibly helpful, I think, for strengthening our own humane education programs and the things that we do every day at Sanctuaries, but also for the bigger movement. I mentioned the Raven Corps, but there's so many organizations that we are trying to work with in a variety of ways. ALDF is certainly one. We have a former ALDF attorney on our LEAP board, and he's been extremely helpful. For the second year of LEAP in high school, the kids now have a pretty strong focus on animal law, and we have 5 different sessions where they learn about animal law as it relates to farmed animal welfare, pets and what laws apply to dogs and cats, laboratory animals, wild animals, and those used for entertainment. And the list goes on. And so I think by really trying to utilize those experts in those areas, not only are we amplifying their voices to another generation, but hopefully we're inspiring these kids to even just learn about, like I said before, how many different careers are out there where they can directly or indirectly have an impact on animals and the planet, which has been really neat.
And from that perspective, it's a very exciting time to be alive.
Yeah.
What can animal sanctuaries across the country that get involved to be like a LEAP hub? How can they do that?
How can they do that? Okay, so right now is actually the perfect time because we just opened applications for our existing sanctuary partners to start recruiting for the fall semester for students. We like to catch kids before they're out of school because they get busy during the summer. And we are still taking applicants for new LEAP sanctuaries. So there's a page on our website. If you go to leap4animals.org, there's a page that says for partner sanctuaries. And there's a lot of information there about the program itself, what it entails, and what it takes to be a partner sanctuary. Like I mentioned, we do vet the sanctuaries. They need to have a vegan policy at the sanctuary. Mm-hmm. And to answer questions about what does that mean, there's a lot of details on our website about that. For example, we understand that not every volunteer at every sanctuary will always be vegan, and that they want to have volunteers come that are not, of course, but no animal products are eaten on the premises or used. The founders are ethical vegans, and that message is very clearly, exuded in everything that they do. The teacher who's teaching the LEAP course also does need to be an ethical vegan, because we want to be very clear that when the kids ask questions about, why did you give up dairy, or how did you deal with this social pressure, that they can answer that authentically. And so that's the first thing, is we want to really make sure that our values are aligned and that the curriculum is being held to fidelity. And then, of course, there's some logistical things. So we want to make sure the sanctuaries have general liability insurance so that our insurance company is happy with that, and all of those good things there. We provide funding for the sanctuaries to run the program, as far as there's no cost to them. We give a stipend for every sanctuary to provide a vegan lunch for the kids at every session. We provide t-shirts. We provide all the curriculum for free. We provide the sanctuaries with support from us, myself and my employee, Andrea, as far as if they run into any issues or have any questions. So that's all explained. And then logistically, like I mentioned, the other thing is we take safety very seriously, so that the people working with the children alone, meaning the lead teacher usually, needs to have a background check, CPR certification, sexual harassment training. Again, we fund all that through the generosity of our funders. We're able to accept a certain amount of sanctuaries and make sure they're fully covered. Because as a sanctuary founder, I know that most sanctuaries don't have a whole lot of extra money for those things.
That's so true. I would think if I were a sanctuary out there, I would want to get on board here. Not only are you developing a community with, like-minded connections, support, but, for those smaller sanctuaries that just don't have the means or the staff to put together an education program like this is just like falling in your lap. How wonderful. I mean, whatever, if there are 12 criteria and I'm only at 11, I'll work to get that one remedied, and I'll be applying, right?
Absolutely. And we're happy to help with that, to guide people, like whatever it is that they need to fulfill, we're happy to point them in that direction. And that really was the impetus behind LEAP, was how do I use a teaching background to create and hand this program to other people that don't have the background or the time to do it. And of course, LEAP can be run by volunteers. My sanctuary is all volunteer run. We don't have any staff. And we run LEAP. It's once a month, and we have volunteers come help to prepare lunch. I'm the teacher, but you can also, of course, recruit, your regular volunteers and staff if they are the right fit to be the monthly LEAP teacher. And it's a really cool way to volunteer as well.
It's incredible.
Thank you.
What are some creative ways that you have implemented successful fundraising? Because fundraising is always going to be an issue.
The fundraising has been challenging. And to be honest, we're still pretty much at the very beginning. We are, like I mentioned, we ran a pilot here in Northern California for 1.5 years. We ran a semester and then a full year, very small. We had only 6 sanctuaries the first full year. And this year we had 18 sanctuaries nationwide. Obviously, funding is more. We've primarily been funded by grants and foundations thus far. We do have a few amazing donors who will give an annual contribution or a monthly contribution to support students because, like we said, we want it to be free for all kids. So the cost of the program, when we break it down, for the full leadership program that the kids go through and all the materials and all the lunches and all that good stuff, and then supporting them. We also support them when they're done with LEAP to try to connect them with organizations like Mercy for Animals, ALDF. We have a whole bunch in the wings here that we're working on to connect them with internships when they get out. So it's about $200 a student to provide them with all of that help, support, and fund the sanctuaries. So it's not cheap, but it is really a leadership program. This is not a one-time assembly that the kids are going to see. Not to say those aren't also important, but it's an investment in the next generation of really developing them into a leader. And what I always tell people is, these people in the communities that pay $3,000 for a cow at the fair to support a student, that's not market rate for a cow or a steer, right? You can go to the grocery store and see, unfortunately, how much those animals sell for. These farmers and these community members, these senators, like there's US representatives, they specifically say, I'm going to pay, triple the market rate for this animal because I want to support the student. And so we say, what if we could have people like that support students in a way where the animals are not being exploited and the kids are not being taught to lose their compassion as they grow up?
Love it. What's the most rewarding aspect of the in the youth context of animal advocacy?
Oh, there's so many. That's a really hard choice. Personally, for me, as a former teacher and a sanctuary founder together, I think I have a unique perspective on that. But I have absolutely loved seeing the light bulb go on for young people. Like you can almost see it when it happens. And it's like, wait, what? Cows have to be pregnant to make milk? Like, yeah. Why did no one tell me this? And I'm 17 and I have no idea. And what happens to the babies? And I've been lied to, right? And it's sort of that moment that we all had. But seeing them have it at a younger age and be fired up to do something about it from that time forward is so cool. And then I think, again, seeing the parents, you mentioned the parents earlier. One really neat thing we do in LEAP is we have Friends and Family Day, which is at the end of the year, usually in May, it's a school year. The students invite their parents to the sanctuary and the kids lead an educational day. They prepare a vegan lunch for their families. They give them an educational tour. And seeing the parents and the families be more open to this message and be more open to learning about it and thinking critically about it because it's their own children who are teaching them has been really incredible to witness.
How do you envision LEAP growing in the next 5 years, and what are your hopes for its long-term impact?
I have so many. I'm notoriously overly ambitious, as you probably can tell by running a sanctuary and LEAP at the same time. So, slow and steady growth. But first and foremost, we're so excited to be expanding to more states. So right now, like we just had a sanctuary join from Hawaii. We're going to have our first sanctuary on the Big Island out there. They're offering LEAP as a summer camp program for kids. We also have that option so that sanctuaries that don't have the staff to run it every month can recruit enough volunteers to do it as a 1-week intensive leadership summer day camp. So I think growing to every state would for sure be one of my goals because, of course, there are FFA and 4-H chapters in almost every city in every state. And we would love to be able to offer this to as many students as we possibly can. we're also this fall 2025, we're expanding to Canada, which I'm
Oh,
so excited about because I don't know if you know, but there's a lot of amazing farm animal sanctuaries in Canada. Some have been asking, and it's a matter of logistics and the nonprofit side of paperwork and all that, but we're so excited to be moving in that direction, and welcoming new sanctuaries there in the fall. And so besides those two things, after a couple more years of expanding there, I think we'd really like to also have a virtual program so that teachers can teach it in the classroom. And of course, it's not going to be the same as the hands-on program, but there simply aren't sanctuaries near every inner city, for example, in America. And so we figure if we can get some of this critical information through to classrooms and build that empathy in kids and do some virtual type field trips with our animals at the sanctuaries, that's certainly better than nothing for those students.
100%. So what is the one action that any of our listeners can take today to create a better life for animals in their own community?
In their own community, I think obviously if you're not vegan, I'd say that's the number one, which probably many people that listen to this podcast are. And I thank you for that already. But as we all know, it really does have the biggest impact, even though you can't see it always. I tell people I have 56 animals at my sanctuary, but you save 100 animals a year by going vegan. That's more than I have at the sanctuary. So it seems abstract to people, but that really is the best way to help humans, non-humans, and the environment. As far as something else, I think the students and the kids, the youth that you run into in your own life, encourage them to be thinking about these issues. If there's a LEAP sanctuary in their area, they should sign up to be part of the program. If there's not, really encouraging them to explore ways that they can get involved, because as adult mentors, I think they have a lot more influence than they think, and kids are eager for compassion. They're eager for empathy. It's something, like I said, that I think needs to be modeled and practiced a lot more in our society.
Yeah, it's like a hole in your heart, and you have it, but you don't know what to fill it with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's amazing to see kids even just come visit the sanctuary and be outside and connect with nature, connect with animals. Like, I think there's which is a podcast for another time, but there's such a mental health crisis in our country. And I think a lot of it is this lack of community and lack of connection to nature and, other beings. And that is something that I hope LEAP fills for a lot of kids.
So in conclusion, Danielle, tell us how we can find you again and how we can help you, whether, through volunteering, donations, or spreading awareness.
Yeah.
Let us help you.
All the above. I think the website is leap4animals.org. The partner sanctuaries can find us there. Students can find us there. Donors can fund us there. So I think obviously the need for financial support is critical. We are a very small organization. There's only 2 employees, and we're primarily run through volunteers and the sanctuaries that implement the curriculum. So funding to continue to allow us to expand to more states and reach more students would be incredible. And then, of course, manpower. So if you are someone who is passionate about these issues and you live near a LEAP sanctuary, we're in 12 states right now, but I am interviewing new sanctuaries all the time. So hopefully that's growing. They can find the list of sanctuaries on our website. And I would say call them, email them, see if you can volunteer, make lunches for the LEAP students, help with the tie-dye t-shirt workshop when they get to know each other, help with animal care workshops where the founder may need an extra set of hands when showing how to do health checks on a goat. Like, you never know. So I think volunteerism and funding are really the 2 main things that people can do besides sharing the message. If you're located near me, I'm in Northern California. We are running LEAP in the fall. So I'm blackberrycreek.org. That's my sanctuary is Blackberry Creek. People can volunteer with me if they're local to NorCal. And there's quite a few others as well. So I would say check them out.
Well, Danielle Hanosh, you are just amazing. I'm so thankful that you were on our show. So pleased to meet you. I'm imagining us speaking again next year, and you have 3 times the sanctuaries under your hub. That. Yes.
I would love that. And where are you located, Cheryl? We'd love
I live in Henderson, which is right outside of Las Vegas. So as a city girl, I can truly appreciate what you're trying to do, because so many of us, we just didn't grow up really in nature.
Yeah.
Or certainly not around farm animals, and they need us so desperately.
They do. They really do. And they do so well with kids. I think kids and animals, just as we know, bond very quickly. We don't have any sanctuaries in Nevada yet, so.
Well, the weather's a little touchy, but I like the statement yet.
Yes. Yeah. No, we plan to be everywhere eventually.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you, Cheryl, for having me today.
Thank you. This has been Better Life for Animals. And if you've enjoyed our show, please like and subscribe so that we can continue to create a better life for animals.
Thank you for joining us on the Better Life for Animals podcast. Together, we can create a world where all beings are treated with dignity, respect, and care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more people and spread awareness about the incredible work happening in animal sanctuaries. You can also share this episode with friends and fellow advocates to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep speaking up, taking action, and making a difference for the animals.